She slapped my 9-year-old nephew across the face in front of a full restaurant because he used the wrong hand to hold a fork. What she didn't know, I'm the man who owns the building, the kitchen, the silverware, and tonight, her fate. She humiliated a child. So I slammed her face into a $200 lobster. The moment her face hit that lobster, everything changed. But that wasn't the end. That was only the first course. Wait until you see what I served her next. I never planned for blood that night. It was supposed to be quiet, gentle. Just me and my nephew, Caleb, sitting under chandeliers that looked like frozen fireworks, in a place where napkins were folded like swans, and people whispered instead of spoke. He was turning 9. 9 years old, and already carrying the kind of sadness most grown men don't survive. His father, my brother, died in a car crash 2 years ago. His mother followed soon after, lost to grief in all the ways society doesn't track. Caleb barely spoke for months, and now he was smiling again, eating again. Tonight was about life, about letting him feel like a boy, not a burden. I picked Le Marais, the finest French restaurant in the district. I knew the maitre d'. I'd designed the damn place back when I still cared about glass curvature and marble acoustics. It had cost me years of vision, nights of sleep, and most of my 40s. But tonight, none of that mattered. Only Caleb did. He wore a little gray blazer. I adjusted his tie before we walked in. He looked at me and said, "Uncle, do you think I'll be okay?" I smiled. "Tonight, kiddo, you're royalty." The maitre d' greeted us personally, sat us near the center, under golden light. Caleb ran his fingers along the edge of the glass like it was magic. I ordered him the lobster. He'd never tried it before. "Is it fancy?" he whispered. "Fancier than dragons," I whispered back. We didn't see her at first, not until we heard that laugh. Thin, icy, dismissive. I turned slightly. There she was, Karen, chairwoman of the HOA, face frozen like she smelled something beneath her, seated in crimson, like a queen without a crown, flanked by 2 women who giggled on command. I didn't know then what she would do, but something in my bones tightened. Something ancient. Something that knew. She was going to hurt him. And I was going to be the last person on earth she should have tried that with. She noticed him before we noticed her. Caleb was quietly trying to figure out which fork to use. God love him, he was trying so hard to fit in. The table had more silverware than he had fingers. He glanced at me, unsure, and I gave him a nod. Left hand. That's how he'd always held utensils. I wasn't about to make him feel wrong for being who he was. But that's when her eyes found him. Karen Whitmore. The woman who once fined a family for having a wind chime that sounded too whimsical. The HOA tyrant who once removed a swing from a tree because it invited undesirables. Now here she was. Lipstick like blood, hair lacquered into place like a helmet, eyes scanning the room for someone to judge. She found him, her gaze narrowed like a scope. No emotion, just contempt. The kind that came from years of entitlement and no one ever slapping her back into humanity. She leaned into the woman beside her. Some HOA underling with too much plastic surgery and too little backbone, and whispered something. Then she laughed. That laugh again. It didn't carry far, but it sliced. Caleb heard it. He dropped his spoon. The clang was quiet, but in a room like this, silence made it thunder. Karen didn't flinch. In fact, she pulled out her phone. Subtle, casual. But I caught the lens glint as she angled it toward our table, toward Caleb. I leaned forward, jaw tight. "She's recording," I said under my breath. Caleb froze. "Did I do something wrong?" "No," I said. "She did." She turned away, grinning smugly as her fingers tapped across the screen. Seconds later, I felt my phone buzz. A message from a neighbor. Screenshot. A post on the HOA residence group. "Looks like someone brought the help to dinner. Left-handed and lost. Charming." There was a blurry photo of Caleb, face downcast, spoon on the floor. My hands clenched into fists under the tablecloth. Every fatherly instinct I'd ever suppressed since taking him in started roaring awake in my chest. Karen didn't just laugh at him. She marked him, branded him publicly, for sport. And that was the moment I stopped being calm. I still looked calm, but something inside me went completely still. The kind of stillness before an earthquake breaks the floor. She had no idea who she'd just made an enemy of. But she would. If you felt your blood boil the moment she hit post, drop a 7 in the comments. She hasn't seen consequences. Yet. I stared at the post like it was a loaded weapon pointed at my family. My nephew, my boy, used as digital target practice for a woman who'd never worked a real job, never missed a meal, never lost anyone who mattered. Karen didn't just judge him, she broadcast him. She ridiculed a child on a private HOA group that, let's be honest, she ran like her own little fiefdom. And for what? Because he used the wrong fork? Because his tie wasn't designer? Because a child dared to exist in her curated ecosystem of money and manufactured manners? I looked up. She wasn't done. Karen stood now, sauntering toward the restroom with the kind of forced elegance that screamed, "Look at me." As she passed our table, she slowed, calculated. She leaned slightly toward Caleb and, with a smile carved from cruelty, murmured, "We usually seat families like yours closer to the kitchen. Mistake, I suppose." Caleb flinched. I snapped. I stood so fast my chair screeched back across the marble. Karen turned, startled, but tried to recover with that smug tilt of her chin. I met her gaze, voice low and steady. "Say another word, and I'll make sure it's your last sentence in this restaurant." She blinked, but that smile didn't fade. If anything, it twisted. "Oh, you're one of those uncles. Overprotective. Fragile ego. You know, there's a difference between raising a boy and crippling one." I stepped closer, towering over her. "You think you're powerful because you have a title and a clipboard? I've built empires while you were busy approving fence paint colors. Stay away from him." She scoffed, spun, and strutted back to her table, but not before flashing her phone screen toward me. On it, the post. Now with likes, comments, laugh reacts. She was proud. She was proud of hurting a child. And she had no idea she'd just stepped into a fight with a man who once redesigned an entire district because someone told him he couldn't. Karen drew first blood. She just didn't know yet. I don't bleed. I burn. Karen sat back down like she owned the room. She sipped her wine, smirking like the villain in a cheap soap opera, and every few minutes I caught her glancing at us, gloating. I could feel the heat behind my eyes, the way adrenaline coils and waits. My fingers tapped a rhythm on my thigh I didn't recognize. A storm was coming, and I was its eye. I leaned toward Caleb. "You okay, champ?" He gave me a nod too small to mean anything. His eyes never left his plate. That's when the waitress returned. She looked uncomfortable. She leaned in, whispering just loud enough for me to hear. "I'm so sorry, sir. There's been a request to relocate your table. Ms. Whitmore says your seating is obstructing the guest experience. Management didn't approve it, but she's persistent." I smiled tightly. "Tell management if they move us an inch, I'll take this building off the map and rebuild it as a playground for left-handed kids only." She blinked, then nodded and walked away fast. Caleb looked up at me, whispering, "Why does she hate us?" I couldn't answer. I wanted to tell him people like Karen don't hate us. They hate mirrors. And right now, he was reflecting everything she wasn't. Pure, unfiltered, real. Then it happened. Karen rose again, slow, theatrical. This time she didn't head to the restroom. She walked straight to us. Her heels clicked like a countdown. I stood halfway, eyes narrowed. "Turn around." She ignored me. She knelt down beside Caleb, voice syrupy. "Sweetheart, you're just not meant for places like this. But don't worry, some kitchens always need help." And then, she slapped him. A short, sharp strike across the cheek. My brain didn't process it fast enough. But Caleb's head snapped sideways, his fork clattered, his eyes, wide, stunned, glassy. And then the world tilted. I rose in full. Karen was still crouched, maybe about to say something else. She never got the chance. Time fractured. For a split second the world lost all sound. No clinking of silverware, no murmuring voices. Just the echo of her slap burning across Caleb's cheek, and the hollow thud as his fork hit the floor. He didn't cry. He just sat there, motionless, stunned, as if his mind couldn't register what his skin had just endured. One second he was a boy eating dinner, the next, a target in some sick power game. Karen rose slowly, dusting off her designer sleeve like she'd brushed lint off her dress, not just assaulted a child. That's when I moved. I didn't shout. I didn't threaten. I struck. My left hand grabbed the back of her head, fistful of brittle, over-processed blonde curls. I yanked hard. Her body buckled backward with a gasp. The room collectively inhaled. She tried to scream, but I was already stepping forward. With one smooth motion, I slammed her face down into the table, right into Caleb's untouched lobster platter. The crack of her nose hitting porcelain, the wet splash of beurre blanc sauce, the snap of the lobster shell. It all erupted like a culinary thunderclap. Karen shrieked, a guttural, muffled noise as her face mashed into claw and cream. I didn't let go. For 3 full seconds, I held her down, her arms flailing like a puppet on tangled strings. Her wine glass tipped and shattered. A waiter dropped a tray somewhere behind us. Then I leaned in and whispered, calm, cold. You wanted to teach him a lesson. Let me teach you one. This is what consequences taste like. I released her. She stumbled back, face drenched in sauce and pride shattered. Her mascara bled into the cream like ink and milk. Hair stuck to her cheeks. One false eyelash hung askew like a broken gate. The room had gone dead silent. Karen blinked, lips trembling, hand hovering over her ruined face. You assaulted me! I straightened my jacket, looked her square in the eye. No, I stopped you. Caleb hadn't moved. I turned, knelt beside him, and gently touched his arm. You okay, buddy? He nodded once, mechanically, still trying to process it all. Karen pointed a shaking finger at me. I'm calling security. The police. You're done here. I stepped closer again, towering above her now. Call them, but make it quick, because by the time they arrive, this room will already know who you really are, and they'll know who I am too. You see, Karen, you slapped a child. I just wiped off the filth. She opened her mouth, but no words came. The maitre d' appeared at the edge of the room, frozen halfway between intervention and awe. A few patrons had risen from their tables. One woman clapped once, sharply, another followed, and then applause. Slow, building, reluctant at first, then real. Karen turned in a circle, looking for someone, anyone, to defend her. There was no one. Karen stumbled back, dripping sauce and venom, her hand trembling as it clutched the remains of her dignity. A waiter offered her a napkin. She snatched it, then snarled at him like a cornered cat. The applause faded, but the silence that followed was heavier. Curious. Waiting. Karen tried to salvage the room. He assaulted me. Did you all see that? I was defending this restaurant from disruption. Her voice cracked halfway through the lie. I reached into my jacket pocket. You want to talk about disruption? I said, calm and cutting. Let's talk about what you did before you touched a child. From my coat, I pulled a small remote. One button. That's all I needed. I turned toward the bar. Behind it was a black glass panel, pure aesthetic to most, but I knew better. I helped install it. A retractable projector screen, integrated into the marble, invisible until summoned. I pressed the button. With a soft mechanical hum, the panel descended. Guests turned, confused, until the screen flickered to life. And then they saw it. The HOA group post. Her post. Caleb's photo, snapped mid-stumble, spoon falling. The caption beneath it in bold. Looks like someone brought the help to dinner. Left-handed and lost. Charming. Gasps rippled across the room. Some looked at her. Others looked at me. I spoke louder now. Firm. Grounded. She filmed a child, without consent, mocked him online, targeted him for being different. Then she walked over, insulted him to his face, and slapped him. All before dessert. Karen's mouth opened, but no sound came. A man near the window muttered, "Unbelievable." I turned to the staff. "I have video from a second angle, from my lapel cam. Full footage, start to finish, including the moment she struck him." The maitre d' stepped forward at last, his face pale, but his voice steady. "Ms. Whitmore, we will need you to leave. Now." "This is absurd! You're taking his side?" Karen shrieked, voice shrill. The maitre d' didn't flinch. "We're taking the side of decency, and of the child you humiliated." Karen turned in place, searching for backup. There was none. I took one step toward her. "You stepped into this place thinking you owned it. You walked through the front door armed with ego and cruelty. But you forgot something." She stared at me, mascara streaked. "I built this room." Karen froze mid-step. She blinked, slowly, as if her brain had just slammed into a wall it didn't know existed. "You. What did you say?" I didn't move. I let the weight of my words hang there, let her drown in them. "I built this room. I designed every angle of the lighting you used to mock a child. I selected the marble you smeared your ego across. I negotiated the wine list you spilled like spit. And this morning," I pulled out a folded document from my blazer pocket, "I purchased a controlling interest in the holding company that owns this entire restaurant group." I unfolded the papers with precision, each flick of my wrist intentional, deliberate, then handed them to the maitre d'. He scanned the signature line, his eyebrows lifted. Then he turned to the room and bowed slightly in my direction. Karen's mouth opened, but no words came. Her face contorted. Rage, confusion, fear, all fighting for space on one over-painted canvas. "This is a joke," she spat. "You're bluffing. You can't. People like you don't just buy places like this." I stepped forward. Calm. Deadly calm. "That's where you're wrong, Karen. People like me build places like this. People like you just sit in them and pretend the chair makes you royal." The guests murmured. A couple even chuckled. Karen's eyes darted to the maitre d'. "You're just going to let him humiliate me?" He didn't blink. "Ms. Whitmore, you've done that yourself." She spun on me. "You think you're so noble? You think this makes you the hero?" I leaned in, just enough for her to hear me clearly. "I don't care about being noble. I care about my nephew. And tonight, you taught him what hate looks like. So I showed him what justice feels like." Silence swallowed her. I turned toward the staff. "From this moment forward, Ms. Whitmore is permanently banned from every restaurant under my brand. No service, no exceptions." Someone clapped, then another. It spread, like flame catching dry wood. Real applause this time, loud, honest. Karen stood in the center of the room, lobster sauce still clinging to her collar, and realized she had lost, completely. And I wasn't finished. "And Karen," I said as she backed toward the door, "expect a letter from my legal team by Monday. You laid a hand on my family. That comes with a price." Karen didn't walk out of the restaurant. She fled, stumbling past tables, face streaked with sauce and shame, her heels clicking unevenly as she practically tripped over herself. Someone near the exit lifted their wine glass mockingly and muttered, "Bon appetit, Karen." She didn't look back, not once. And just like that, the poison left the room. But the damage she'd done still sat across from me. Caleb hadn't touched his plate. His fingers were curled in his lap, fists clenched tight. His eyes stared down, locked on a breadcrumb like it held answers he couldn't find. I knelt beside him, lowered my voice. "You did nothing wrong, Caleb. Not one thing." He nodded, but the gesture was robotic. I continued, firmer now, voice sharpened with truth. "What she said, what she did, that wasn't about you. That was about her. Weak people try to hurt what they don't understand. And you, kid, you scared her." That got a blink out of him. I leaned closer. "Because you're kind, you're smart, and you're left-handed, which, by the way, is the mark of a damn genius." He finally smiled. A real one. Small, but enough. The maitre d' returned then, standing tall beside our table. His posture was different, apologetic, reverent even. He looked to Caleb, not me. "Sir," he said, We'd be honored if you'd allow us to restart your birthday. Properly. Before Caleb could respond, the lights dimmed. The room shifted, not with fear this time, but intention. From the kitchen doors emerged the head chef himself, pushing a cart with a new lobster dish, freshly plated. On top sat a breathtaking chocolate cake, shaped like an open book. The frosting read, in smooth cursive, "To Caleb. Brave. Brilliant. Left-handed and legendary." A candle flickered at the center. The chef gave a half bow. "Compliments of the house, and of the new owner." Caleb's jaw dropped. He looked at me, eyes wide. "Did you do that?" I smiled, squeezing his shoulder. "You earned it." The staff gathered. Patrons who had earlier been silent now stood to sing. It wasn't awkward. It was warm, sincere. A wave of support in place of what had been mockery. And Caleb? He straightened his back, lifted his chin. And for the first time that night, I saw it. He believed it. He believed in himself again. As the song ended and he blew out the candle, a woman at the far table raised her glass. "To the boy with the sharpest left hook in the room!" Laughter erupted. Joyful, not cruel. I looked across the crowd. No more whispers. No more stares. Just people. Decent people. Recognizing what had been wrong, and what had now been made right. Caleb dug into his cake, finally. Between bites, he leaned over and whispered, "Uncle? Yeah? That was the best birthday. Ever." My throat tightened. I nodded once, firmly. "Mine too, kid. Mine too." The next morning, the world had already changed. I woke up to 24 missed calls, 76 messages, and one headline that said everything in a single sentence. HOA chairwoman slaps child in 5-star restaurant, gets slammed into lobster by new owner. Someone had filmed it. Of course they had. 2 angles, high resolution, crystal clear audio. Karen's voice, sharp and unmistakable. Caleb's stunned silence. My voice, cold, composed, delivering the line that now played across every feed. "You slapped a child. I wiped off the filth." By 8 a.m., it had gone viral. By 9 a.m., Karen's name was trending in 4 states. By noon, she'd been formally removed from the HOA board, her group chats locked, her email disabled, and her porch decorated with a neat little sign someone had staked in her manicured lawn. Vacancy. Tyrants not welcome. She tried to fight it, of course. There were statements, half-hearted apologies, even a bizarre attempt to frame me as unhinged. But the footage didn't lie. Neither did the dozens of people in that room. Guests, staff, even the chef, who came forward and said exactly what they saw. She wasn't just defeated. She was dismantled. And yet, that wasn't the part that stuck with me. What stayed with me was the way Caleb walked into school that Monday. Chin up, hands steady, left hand proudly holding his pencil as he waved goodbye without shame. What stayed with me was the voicemail I received from his teacher that afternoon. "I don't know what you did, but Caleb volunteered to read aloud in front of the class today. That's a first." What stayed with me was the quiet. No more anxiety in his eyes when someone looked at him too long. No more double-checking the position of his silverware at dinner. He was still a child, but now one who knew that his uncle would burn the world down before letting it lay a hand on him. That was the real victory. Not the headlines, not the silence of a disgraced HOA tyrant, but the restoration of something fragile. Belief. In himself. In his worth. In the idea that when someone does something awful to you, you are allowed to fight back. And sometimes, the world will fight with you. I took Caleb to the park that weekend. We sat on the bench near the duck pond, the one where his father used to take us both when we were kids. I handed him a small box. He opened it carefully, eyes wide. Inside was a gold pen, inscribed along the barrel. Left-handed, right always. He laughed softly. "Uncle, is this for real? Every time you write with it, I want you to remember, you never have to switch hands for anyone." He nodded, clutching it tight like it was Excalibur. We didn't talk much after that. We just sat. 2 survivors, 2 builders. One past finished, one future still forming. But I knew one thing with absolute clarity. Karen tried to humiliate a child and wound his soul. Instead, she woke up a fire that burned through her throne and lit something eternal in him. And me? I remembered who I used to be before grief, before silence, before the need to stay small. That night gave Caleb back his voice, and it reminded me, mine never left. Some people think justice is loud. Fists pounding on desks, voices rising, headlines screaming. But sometimes, true justice is quiet. A man standing when no one else will. A child realizing he doesn't need to shrink to fit the room. A bully learning, finally, that power doesn't protect cruelty. That night wasn't just about a dinner. It wasn't even just about Karen. It was about every kid who's ever been told they're too different, too messy, too loud, too soft, too broken to belong. It was about every adult who swallowed their anger because that's just how people are. And it was about a line. The one no one is allowed to cross without facing what waits on the other side. Because when Karen struck Caleb, she didn't just strike a boy. She struck his voice, his identity, his right to exist as he is. And in that moment, I realized something we all need to remember. You don't need to be violent to be dangerous. You don't need to raise your voice to be heard. You just need to know where you stand, and who you're standing for. Caleb didn't just get a birthday that night. He got something most people never get until they're much older. A moment where the world told him, you matter. You're not wrong for being different. You are worth defending. And maybe that's the lesson we carry with us. That being decent isn't optional. That mocking a child says more about the adult than the kid. And that when we see something wrong, we don't look away. We don't stay seated. We stand. For someone. For something. For what's right. So to anyone watching this who's ever been made to feel small, ashamed, or invisible because of who you are, hear me now. You are not alone. And you are not weak for walking away from hate. But you are strong if you decide one day to face it. If you've ever stood up for someone who couldn't fight for themselves, or wished someone had stood for you, drop a 7 in the comments. Let's light this place up with people who still believe in basic decency. Like this video if you believe standing up for others still matters. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next time someone like Karen thinks they're untouchable. Because trust me, we'll be watching. And next time, we won't just bring the lobster, we'll bring the whole kitchen.